So, as Connie was saying, the topic for our panel today is weathering the storm and dealing with periods of change. This is something that we obviously see through any presidential transition, and also within one administration. We see changes in from legislation, and that individual agencies face from turnovers in leadership and things like that. Perhaps these days the storm that we're weathering is a little bit bigger, a little bit more change happening than we're used to. But hopefully today we can get at some key strategies that how agencies and managers help employees deal with this. We have, as Connie said, Denise from Fish and Wildlife Service right here, Thomas from the Defense Department right here, and Becky is on the end from IRS. Denise, maybe you can kick us off. How normal is what we've seen over the last year and a half or 2 years?
It's not.
It's
Okay, thanks. So it's not normal, and I've been with the federal government since 1986. So I've been through many transitions, but this one was different in a lot of ways, because normally we have a transition team that comes right in and kind of takes over, and the Fish and Wildlife Service is part of the Department of the Interior, and so that's a big agency, 70,000 people or more, and plus seasonals, and a lot of land management. So it's real things that have to be dealt with. Our cabinet member, our Secretary of the Interior, weathers, no matter what administration, weathers the most lawsuits because there's so much real estate involved. So we're used to having a kind of rapid transition, and this time it's still slow. We still don't have a director for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but one thing I can say is that a lot of our political appointees that we do have in the department were in former Republican administrations. So we lucked out in that respect, because we got people who understood Interior from previous administrations. Advice I can give people, I've been in the senior executive service since 97. I acted for a year, and then officially since 98, is no matter what administration it is, the best thing to do is find people that you feel you can trust, that you have some good eye contact with, and doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats or independents, it doesn't matter. And that will serve you well. So take people as individuals, not for the party they're with. And in every administration, there are good people, because there are a lot of government employees.
Thank you. So, Becky, what do you think about this? How, and not just this administration, this change, but generally speaking, how can employees deal with new teams coming in? What steps can they take to shield themselves from the tumult that is just sort of inherent any time that this happens, and anything that we see in any sort of transition period?
So, let me start it with, how many of you have worked on, say, a high-profile effort, right? And then all of a sudden, your boss or your boss's boss suddenly nixes that, right? Okay, right? How many? Okay. Okay. It happens, right? Change is constant. This happens, and we survive. So, when I think about this, this is when we talk about the transition or, whatever, or administration changes, or it's any leadership change, right? You have to be adaptable. You have to be resilient, okay? Or you just won't survive. And so what I always ask, or ask myself, because, it's happened to me where, you're kind of king of the hill or queen of the hill or princess of the hill, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what the dickens? That project's gone and I'm doing something goofy and I don't understand. And you kind of go through some mental, right? Okay? So what I encourage y'all to do is you got to stay tough, but you got to talk to people, okay? You have to have a support, a relationship component, okay? Whether it's at work or whether it's at home, but you definitely need to be able to share what you're thinking and feeling, but you got to stay strong. You got to remember why you're a federal employee, right? You signed up to serve, okay? You signed up to serve, and so that means you serve in whatever capacity it is, okay? And you do your darndest, okay? But make sure you have that support. You've dealt with change, or you wouldn't be here. You've dealt with change before. So as you're dealing with each particular project or each particular effort, there's going to be highs and lows, okay? You know that, you've dealt with it, and so it's going to be that same thing, okay? And so I try to put it in that perspective. I hope that helps, because that's really what we're dealing with, and we've all lived through that before.
So then is it inherent in the job of a federal employee that they maintain that sort of flexibility, that they're keep an open mind about what their day-to-day is going to be like?
So, many of you, I am sure, are leaders or plan or want to attain maybe an executive position. And so one of what is the executive core competencies is in leadership, and it ties into adaptability and resiliency and leading change, okay? And so it's extremely important that we don't get tied down to, this was my project, this was what I was doing, and that's the only thing I can do. We've got to make sure we expand our horizons. We've got to make sure we tie in and continue to develop ourselves, okay? Develop ourselves with different skills so that you remain relevant. And that you have the opportunity to step up when the next big thing comes that you really have interest in, that you're ready to show you are the best, and next one, you should be taking that on. Okay?
Thank you. Thomas, I think there's more than one way to think about expanding your horizons and staying relevant. Something that we are seeing, I think, increasingly, and it's something that the presidential management agenda got at a little bit in making sure employees have the relevant skills to the jobs that we see today in this environment, is that it's not just disruption coming from a new administration or a new leader coming in, but from the evolving nature of the jobs themselves. Your field in cybersecurity, it's constantly evolving. How do employees deal with that and protect themselves and stay relevant when the ground beneath them is sort of shifting?
Yeah. So one of the things that struck me, what Becky said, is we've got lots of sayings in the Department of Defense. One of the things is your plan only survives first contact, because when you actually start executing it and you're interacting with others and you're collaborating, what you thought would work doesn't, so you need to be flexible. I particularly like what you said about being resilient and some opportunities. I don't know who said it, but there's always opportunity in chaos, so you should be able to prepare yourself and stage yourself to take that opportunity and chaos and lead people through it, including yourself. So the other thing that we say a lot in the military is you don't fight the last war. So, and this is probably an imperfect analogy, but the past administration was, and it wasn't a war, it was an effort we were going forward as a nation to accomplish, because as civil servants, and we are servants, our boss is the Constitution. Our boss is not any particular elected official at any given time, or whoever signs our time cards. It's the U.S. Constitution. So when we're looking at that, we need to forward things for the nation. We may implement it based on the past administration. Now we have a new administration. Resiliency. What do we do inside ourselves with our teammates, with the people that we either collaborate, manage, supervise, coach, including ourselves, to stage ourselves to forward the mission of the department? Some of the things that we are doing in the department as leaders is, and with help from Congress, is we now have a thing called a cyber-accepted workforce. So in my field, many people recognize that this is another military phrase. So I'm going to try not to use acronyms, but it's a high-demand, low-density asset, right? Lots of demand for cybersecurity folks, not a whole lot of them out there. In fact, depending on who you look at, there's a projection of over 2 million shortfall in cybersecurity experts in the next 10 years. So how do we in DoD recruit and, more importantly, retain folks who can do this? So we are looking at ways to allow people to come in and out of the Department of Defense. So, for example, for the first time ever, we can bring people off the street into the military and make them as significant as a senior level manager, a captain or a colonel, if you're familiar with those. Or just think of a VP. You bring somebody right off the street. In the past, good luck trying to get them anything other than an entry-level position. But now we have authorities to bring them in at a higher level. The key there is culturally, the people who are already there, how do we adapt them to accept this new person coming off the street to learn from? On the federal civilian side, we have similar authorities where we can now do direct hire. And we can pay them better. It's never going to be as much as industry can do, but we offer other things. And we have to communicate the message that you're supporting the Constitution, you're supporting the communities and the nation. And oh, by the way, in my field, you can do really cool stuff with people like the CIA and NSA and others that you can't do in commercial industry. So as leaders, we need to be flexible and resilient. We need to be looking for those opportunities that resonate with the people we don't have yet, as well as the people we have.
And to what extent, you mentioned the workforce gap that you have right now. To what extent are you looking at retraining, or I think the operative word that the administration likes to use is reskilling, employees you already have in the door to try to teach them new capabilities and get them ready for something a little different than they had been doing? Is that part of it at all?
That's been part of it all along. One of the things that we've been looking at is putting more money into scholarships. We have a cybersecurity education certification program that's required that we can fund. We're looking at new ways to both recruit people inside and outside. So cyber accepted workforce. We also have to look inside to recruit for that, because these are folks who are going from a competitive status into this new accepted status. So we have to recruit inside to give them additional skills and capabilities. And this is across the board. This is not somebody behind a keyboard. This is everybody from contracting officials to lawyers to strategists, policymakers. It's across the board. Outside, the same way. We're looking at new ways to go out and recruit and retain. One of the things we did this summer is U.S. Cyber Command, in conjunction with DHS, FBI, and others. We had a hiring fair where, for the first time in my experience, we hired people right on the spot based on interviews and resumes. So we're looking at all kinds of different things to bring people in. Once we get them in, educate them, reskill them. If they're a contracting officer who've done commodity construction materials, we need to get folks in who can do commodity IT purchases, and how we train them that way.
Great. So I don't know if you guys will agree with this. From my perspective, a lot of what we see in this field, in this area, has become a lot more public in the last couple of years. All of a sudden, the management of government is a sexy topic, and the New York Times is writing about it every day. And I'm not used to seeing that. I don't know about you guys. So, Becky, I hate to pick on you for this, but the IRS has, how can I put this delicately? They've been in the limelight for a while. Not always in a positive perception. How do employees handle that? What tips do you have for sort of navigating through that sort of attention and staying focused on the job during that?
So, you know, the IRS is not what one would consider a sexy organization, right? It's just not. And we are one that most people love to hate. Okay? And then, you know, along the way, we've had some missteps. Okay? And so we are absolutely in the public eye and have been for years. Okay? One of the things that we find, and I think a lot of you have been involved with like employee engagement surveys, one of the key things that you always will find for people to stay true, to hang tough, even in the worst times, is if they understand and can connect to the mission, right? So when I started, which was over 31 years ago with the service, never intended to stay, let me just say, but 31 years later, I'm still there. One of the things I remember on my very first day, they talked about the IRS mission. And rather than use the fancy mission statement that we all, you know, everybody has one in your organizations, they said, really, the IRS funds freedom, right? Because we bring the revenue in for the country. And that stuck with me about funding freedom. You know, all of the things that we do, all of the things we have in this country, our job is to do that. As ugly as it could be, right? And it's not a fave of anybody. That's what we're supposed to do. And so having that commitment to the mission is essential. So what we need is then we need our leaders to make sure as our folks come in, whether it's a person who's going to come in Cincinnati who opens the mail or the tax returns that are still paper for some, tying that role and that responsibility to the mission, being willing to listen when people say, hey, I'm having a hard time, or what's that story in the paper? Is that true? Okay? Being transparent and honest, that our leaders have to step up. They have to be willing to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, to answer the rumors and the myths. Okay? They have to be committed to bringing that mission and understanding, connecting the dots, so that our folks are willing and excited to come in each and every day and proud of the job that they do. And so, you know, having that commitment to mission, being clear, having people that are willing to talk through and listen, that's key for us.
Denise, do you have anything to add to that? Fish and Wildlife Services, you know, they had their share of headlines over the last couple of years, especially out in Oregon. And the Interior Department in particular, there's been a lot of rumors and myths going on there. What are your thoughts with that?
So I always feel when we have to do like performance plans or talk with students or interns, I always feel very lucky because everyone, with the exception of a few wildly independent types, loves the mission of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We're out there supporting everybody from hunters who want to kill for sport all the way to endangered species biologists who are trying to protect every last pocket mouse in California. So, you know, we pretty much cover the territory and on the environment and on looking at global climate change. And we don't have the luxury of being politically correct. We have to look at what the conservation statistics tell us. And we have some of the best biologists in the world working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So mission is never a problem for us when we're trying to talk to people on the outside and saying, you know, here's what we have to offer. What we do have to work hard for is, like everybody, is maintaining resources. We have to work closely with the Hill appropriations committees. But even there, you know, we have bipartisan support. So what I used to hear probably 10 years ago was that our contractors who came in and had specialized skills, especially in IT in that area, they'd come in and they'd be on contract, and I'd say, why don't you work for us? And they'd say, well, we're making so much more money working in private industry. And I'll second what you said, which is I'd just bring them in my office one-to-one and say, Don't look just at the salary. Look at your total compensation package so you can add 30% to what I'm telling you your salary is. Secondly, I've been working with the same community of people for over 30 years. How many people can say that? That's just a blessing in this day and age. I know people who know me. So, I got to create relationships that are long-standing and just very precious to me. So I didn't have any problem at all bringing contractors in who wanted to work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they're still here today. We retain them. We don't have discrimination issues. I'm not going to say we don't have any, but we don't have the discrimination issues that a lot of them voiced to me that they encountered in private industry. We have a lot of protections built into the government. So, and I'm a woman, obviously, and so I would know if there was a lot of discrimination against women. I don't really see. I see some subtle stuff, but it's nothing like what you kind of hear on the news. So I would say pick an agency that, if you're not in one that you love the mission, now pick one and go where you love the mission, because you'll wake up every day feeling like you've done something meaningful.
Well, I have a couple more questions here, but we're getting a little bit low on time. So before I ask them, is there any questions from the audience that? All right, we have one right here. Is there a microphone? Oh, there's a mic. There's a mic coming. If you just hold on 1 second.
I was just curious about the DoD cybersecurity stuff that you were mentioning earlier. Do you guys have special pay authority?
Under Cyber Acceptance Service, we do. So, in fact, we're in phase 2. We finished phase 1 last year. It was a population of about 500 people, and then we're going to 8,000. And in it, for the GS schedule, for example, and it's not really a GS schedule, I'll just use that, and many people know it. You have a pay range from step 1 to 10. We can go from step 1 to 12. And
That's very nice.
Yeah, and
Wow.
there's additional recruiting and retention bonuses we can apply to it. So the answer to your question is yes.
And you got that through Congress?
We did get that through Congress,
Okay.
yes.
My agency does not have that.
All right.
Does anybody else have a question? Okay. Another trend I think we're seeing in this administration, I know it always happens, so I don't need to pick on what's happening the last couple of years, is turnover from the political staff. That's maybe happening a little bit more frequently than we're used to. And a couple of you have mentioned the importance of forming relationships and having direct contact with people that you trust. Is that especially important when some of the top political staff is changing and having relationships with top career managers or things along those lines? Yeah, Becky, go ahead.
So, one of the things that I truly believe in is, the idea of mentoring and coaching, okay? And I talked before about continual learning and the importance of that. And actually I've gone back so that I can be a certified coach. And so I now do coaching in my spare time. And with that said, though, it is important to have a strong mentoring program in your organization, or to use that kind of program where you have somebody who has been experienced, who can offer advice, right? And both the mentor and the protege actually gain from it. It's not just the protege getting something. The mentor also learns. Using and having that kind of relationship is great. It's a safe place. It's confidential. Same thing with coaching. Coaching's a little different than mentoring, okay? And coaching is a lot about asking those powerful questions. And many of the agencies, like I'm with Treasury, Treasury has its own coaching cadre. I know HUD has its own coaching cadre. OPM has its own coaching cadre. Take advantage of that. It is an amazing opportunity to really start thinking through and finding out the answers, because the answers, with coaching, it's all about you. Right? Okay. When is it that something's all about you, right? Somebody's focused truly on you and learning about you and asking you questions to work through some issues. So please make sure you use that mentoring and that coaching those opportunities, because those are valuable. Again, things that others on the private don't have, those are valuable tools that you can get basically free here and will really help you in the relationship building, in staying the course, in working through issues that you might have and becoming even better as a leader or as an employee.
I'll add to what Becky said, which is that I'm in the Federal Coaching Network, which is run out of Office of Personnel Management. So somehow, it's a mystery to me how this happens, but somehow they'll pick somebody who is looking for a coach, and I'll get assigned to that person. And so that's really nice, because right now I'm coaching somebody who's at Department of Justice. So I learn about justice, and they don't have to worry that anything we say will ever get back to anybody, because I don't know anybody there that person works with. So they feel, I think, especially safe in that coaching environment, which is what you were talking about. And also, I've been able to bring some resources from Interior to bear on that particular person's interests. So I would strongly recommend getting coaching. And you don't have to be coached over a weakness. You can be coached over a strength that you would like to make stronger, which all the research shows that you're better off spending your time making your strengths stronger than trying to pull up your weakest skills. Not to say you shouldn't do anything there, but
Yeah. So back to my sayings. If you were of an age like me, you know the softer side of Sears. Well, if you're younger, you may know about Emotional Intelligence 2.0, emotional IQ. So I'm not a coach, but I participated in coaching, had some wonderful coaches. And going back to my phrase, your plan survives first contact. Well, you got to have a plan. And one of the things I learned from coaches is to collaborate, you have to have that softer side of Sears. I can be very technically savvy, and I can be called in as a thing to focus and fix something, but over life, you really should follow your values, not the money, right? Somebody in the green room was saying, don't chase after the money, chase after what you value, become successful through your values. So mine is, I like it when somebody compliments me, so I figure people will like it if I compliment them. My plan is, I say so many thank yous, and I'm a metrics person. So many thank yous, spend so much time chatting with people, actually getting up and looking them in the eye contact, and that's my plan. If I'm off my plan at the end of the week, I get my assistant to say, you got to help me keep on my plan, because that makes me happier, it makes everybody around me happier, and I support the Constitution better.
Great. So that actually is the end of our time. So please join me in thanking our panelists for everything.